Today, we are talking about some really important ideas that help us understand how people connect or sometimes how they struggle to connect in relationships. We are looking at some core beliefs that shape how someone with a dismissive avoidant attachment style sees the world, especially when it comes to needing others. This comes from the book Understanding the Dismissive Avoidant Attachment Style by Mindy Rivers.
That is right. These beliefs are often very deep, almost like life rules, and they are not just casual thoughts. They shape how people act and feel, even if they do not fully realize it. One of the first big ideas we should explore is this strong belief: I can only rely on myself.
That phrase, I can only rely on myself, sounds like a good thing on the surface, does it not? We often praise independence, but you're saying for some people, it is much more than just wanting to be independent.
Exactly. For many, it is a deeply held rule formed from repeated experiences that feels like the safest conclusion they've ever reached. It can protect them from feeling let down, from shame, or from the pain of hoping someone will be there and then finding they aren't. It becomes a shield.
A shield, that makes sense. So, where does this kind of deep belief come from? Is it something people just decide one day?
Not at all. This belief usually starts very early in life. Imagine a child crying but being ignored. They learn that reaching out does not work. Or a child who is upset and met with impatience, so they learn that showing need just creates problems. If a child is scared and told not to be dramatic, they learn fear is not welcome. Over time, that child stops reaching out. They learn to handle feelings alone because it hurts less than being disappointed over and over again.
So, it is a conclusion based on real life experiences, not just a thought game. And I can see how a child who learns this might actually become quite skilled. They learn to be capable, responsible, self-controlled.
Absolutely. These children often get praised for these traits. Adults might admire them, call them mature. This gives them a sense of pride because they are competent, and relief because that competence means they do not have to rely on what was never there for them. This belief becomes part of who they are, the person who can always handle things.
But that comes at a cost, right? It sounds like it keeps them safe, but also keeps them from important connections. What does this look like for an adult in a relationship, for example?
A very common situation is when someone is stressed, maybe from work. Their partner asks how they are doing, and they just say they are fine. They might not even realize they are holding back, or they genuinely believe they should deal with it alone. The question might even make them feel annoyed because it asks for vulnerability. But partner might step back, and the person ends up carrying the stress alone, feeling more tense. The belief protected them from opening up, but it also cut them off from support.
That is a tough spot. It is a protective measure that ends up isolating them. You also mentioned that relying on others can feel like it creates a debt for some people.
Yes, that is another big part of it. Many experience help as coming with strings attached. If their early life taught them that support was conditional, they might think receiving help means losing their freedom. They might fear that if they accept help, they will owe something they cannot give, or that they will be controlled. So relying on themselves feels cleaner, safer, like they remain in charge of their own life. But the cost is they miss out on the normal human experience of being supported sometimes.
And how does this play out in close relationships, which naturally involve people relying on each other?
It can make relationships feel very risky. When someone believes they can only rely on themselves, a partner's needs can seem overwhelming, almost like demands. Their partner's emotional moments might feel like situations they must manage all alone. Even if they care deeply, this pressure activates their defenses, and they might withdraw to regain a sense of control. This leaves the partner feeling alone, and the relationship becomes strained, not because love is gone, but because reliance feels unsafe.
So, if a partner asks for closeness during a hard time, this person wants to help, but feels overwhelmed by the emotional responsibility. They may think they have to fix it because their belief about reliance suggests they must carry everything. But they also believe relying is unsafe, so they pull back. That sounds like a cycle of relief and then guilt for the person and dismissal for the partner.
Precisely. The belief keeps the pattern going. It also affects how they treat their own needs. They might judge themselves for wanting comfort, not allow themselves to want reassurance, or feel embarrassed if they miss someone. They push through pain instead of asking for support. This can lead to emotional numbness or quiet resentment, feeling like no one is there, even though they rarely let anyone in. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You rely on yourself because you believe you must, and because you rely on yourself, you never experience the support that would challenge the belief.
It makes sense how they would pick partners, too, preferring those who do not ask for much or even those who need them a lot so they can be the giver without revealing their own needs. It's like they're strong in isolation. Also, in the workplace and friendships, they are often seen as the dependable ones who handle things but rarely ask for help. This makes them invisible in their own struggles, even if they feel lonely beneath the competence. So, how does someone start to heal from such a deeply ingrained belief?
Healing begins by understanding that while this belief was once true in their past, it might not be true anymore. Many adults are surrounded by people who would be supportive if given the chance. The hard part is taking that chance, which feels like stepping into vulnerability. The goal is not to become totally dependent, but to allow small, respectful forms of reliance that build trust. For example, when stressed, sharing a small part of it with a partner, not everything, but enough to be known. If the partner responds with kindness, that challenges the old belief and brings relief, showing them they do not have to carry everything alone.
That is a great point. It is about separating reliance from losing who you are. Relying on someone does not mean giving up your independence. It means letting connection be part of your support system. You can still make your own decisions, have boundaries, and decide when and how to share. It is about being human. The belief protected them once, but now they can expand their self-reliance to include trusted others.
Exactly. This new kind of independence allows for connection, making relationships less scary, their inner world less lonely, and love more possible. It's a powerful shift. You do not have to abandon your self-reliance. You can keep it and expand it to allow trustworthy people to stand beside you.
Moving on to another powerful belief, you talk about the idea that needing others is dangerous. This sounds similar to I can only rely on myself, but what is the key difference?
While I can only rely on myself focuses on self-sufficiency, needing others is dangerous is about actively avoiding needing anyone because of a perceived threat. It is a belief that shapes their entire approach to love, often not from one big event, but from many times when needing did not feel safe, welcome, or comforting. Over time, the person learns to treat need as risk, independence as a trap. They protect themselves by minimizing needs and keeping their inner world private. The belief can feel like wisdom, but it keeps intimacy out of reach.
And need itself is such a basic human thing, isn't it? Whether it is physical or emotional. What makes emotional need so threatening for this style?
Emotional need is often the most threatening because it requires being seen, admitting that someone else has the power to affect you. If their early life taught them that being affected is unsafe, they learn to protect themselves by avoiding need. This often starts when a child learns their emotional needs create negative reactions in caregivers, like a sigh of impatience when they cry, or mockery when they express fear. The child learns that needing disturbs the relationship, so they adopt by needing less on the surface. They become more self-contained and less emotionally visible. The belief that needing is dangerous is the child's way of explaining why it is better to keep needs hidden.
So the child basically internalizes that hiding needs is better to keep the bond. They become more self-contained, and this becomes a habit that carries into adulthood. They might not even ask for reassurance when insecure or comfort when overwhelmed.
That is right. The belief shapes their inner life so deeply that needing feels foreign. The belief is also reinforced by experiences of betrayal or inconsistency. If they depended on someone who did not show up, the disappointment can be crushing. To avoid that, they keep dependence small, expecting less from relationships, treating them as something not to lean on too much. They might call it realism, but underneath it is often protection from the pain of disappointment.
And that link to control, where needing someone means losing freedom, seems crucial. If asking for things led to guilt or conditional love in childhood, then as an adult, a partner asking for closeness might feel suffocating.
Yes, closeness can feel like the beginning of dependence, and dependence feels like danger. In a relationship, if a partner asks for more emotional reassurance, the person feels alarmed, not because the request is wrong, but because it activates that belief. They might fear that giving reassurance once means they will always have to, or that emotional engagement will pull them into a caretaker role. So they withdraw, seeing it as safety, while the partner experiences it as rejection. This belief sounds like it turns their own vulnerability into a private burden. Feeling lonely or hurt becomes a problem to solve alone, not a reason to reach out or talk.
Exactly. This can lead to emotional numbness, as repeated private suffering causes them to shut down feelings to keep functioning. And it creates a harsh judgment of others' needs. If they were trained to treat their own needs as dangerous, a partner crying might feel like weakness, or a friend asking for reassurance might feel like drama. This irritation is a defense, not uncaring, but it makes others feel unsafe expressing their humanity. The avoidant person ends up surrounded by silence, which reinforces the belief that needs are not welcome.
So if a partner expresses sadness, they respond with advice or minimize it. The partner feels unseen, becomes more emotional, and then they withdraw, feeling crowded. It is a cycle where both are trying to find safety, but the belief that needing is dangerous makes it hard to connect.
That is precisely it. Healing starts by separating need from danger. Need is not inherently dangerous. Need only becomes dangerous when it is met with shame, inconsistency, or control. Many dismissive avoidants have not had enough experiences of need being met with steadiness. This is why safe relationships can be so healing, because they offer new learning. When you express a need and the other person responds kindly, you begin to update the belief. You learn that needing does not always lead to humiliation. It can lead to comfort.
It is about realizing you can still have boundaries even when you need. You can ask for comfort and still set limits on how much time you need. You can lean on someone but still stand on your own. It is interdependence, not a complete loss of self. This makes need much less frightening.
Right, this belief helped them survive and keep their dignity as a child. But as an adult, it keeps love at a distance. Understanding it is a step toward freedom. You can honor the part of you that learned to be self-sufficient and still allow yourself to need in healthy ways. When you learn that needing can be met with respect, relationships become less threatening and love becomes less of a risk and more of a refuge.
Let us move to another fundamental belief. Love always disappoints. This sounds like a very pessimistic view, but you are saying it is also born from deep experience.
Yes, it is not just cynicism. It often comes from repeated experiences where love was present in some form, but did not provide steady emotional comfort. A person can grow up in a family that stayed together and still feel disappointed by love because the emotional part of love felt missing. They might have relationships that look fine but never feel safe enough to truly relax into closeness. This belief makes distance feel wiser than hope, and self-reliance feel safer than intimacy.
So it is about unmet emotional needs, even if practical needs were met. The child feels a quiet hurt from reaching out and not being met. And as an adult, that hurt turns into a protective belief.
Precisely. This belief protects them by lowering expectations. If you expect love to disappoint, you do not have to feel surprised when it does, and that softens the blow. It also helps avoid vulnerability. If love always disappoints, then wanting love is a setup for pain. So they keep their desires small, their needs private, and their heart guarded. From the outside, they look independent, and inside, they feel safer. But it also blocks the possibility of truly supportive and life-changing love.
It is a double-edged sword. It offers a kind of safety, but prevents deeper fulfillment. What does this look like in a new relationship?
They might enter a relationship feeling hopeful and enjoy the connection at first. But as it deepens, they start feeling anxious about being needed. They might notice their partner's flaws more or experience conflict. Then the belief, love always disappoints, pops up, confirming their fears. They pull back, not just because of what happened, but because this belief frames the whole relationship as a disappointment waiting to happen. Distance then feels like self-protection.
And how does this belief color everyday relationship moments, like a partner having a busy week and being less attentive?
A secure person might feel mildly disappointed and talk about it. Someone with this belief might see it as proof that love is unreliable. They think, I knew it, and they withdraw emotionally. Their withdrawal can create more distance, which then feels like more proof that love disappoints. The belief becomes self-reinforcing, shaping their interpretation and behavior in ways that create the very disappointment they expect.
This also connects to the idea of conditional love, right? If love was given when they performed well and withheld when they struggled, it teaches them love is not steady.
Yes, if love was dependent on a caregiver's mood, they learn love cannot be trusted. Investing deeply then feels dangerous, so they stay emotionally detached, keeping relationships at a distance where disappointment hurts less. In adult partnerships, if a partner asks for emotional closeness, they feel pressure. They might see it as proof that love becomes demanding, thinking, this is what always happens. They become critical or withdraw, the partner feels hurt, and the person becomes more convinced that love is disappointing because relationships always become painful. The cycle strengthens the belief.
It sounds like this belief also hides a lot of unprocessed grief, a mourning for the love they wanted but did not receive.
That is a very insightful point. Instead of staying in grief, they turn it into a conclusion. Love disappoints. This feels strong and protective, but it prevents them from truly mourning. Mourning would mean admitting how much they wanted love to be different. It would require admitting longing and sadness. If vulnerability feels unsafe, the conclusion feels easier. The person may not realize that their cynicism is a way of avoiding grief.
And it affects their willingness to fix things in a relationship, too. Repair needs hope. If you believe love always disappoints, what is the point of trying to talk things out?
Right. They might think, what is the point? It will not change anything. They might prefer to withdraw or end the relationship. This can create a pattern of leaving when things get hard rather than working through them. The person may then accumulate more experiences of love ending painfully, which reinforces the belief. For example, after conflict, they withdraw. The partner wants repair. The avoidant person says it does not matter, leading to them feeling more convinced leaving is the only way to stop the disappointment.
So, how can one begin to heal this belief? It seems so ingrained and reinforced by their life experiences.
Healing begins with recognizing that disappointment in love is real, but it is also incomplete. Love can disappoint because people are imperfect. Still, love does not always disappoint in the same way, and it does not always have to be unsafe. Many dismissive avoidants have not had enough experiences of love that is steady and emotionally responsive. When they do have those experiences, the belief begins to soften. The person begins to learn that love can include disappointment and also include repair, conflict and return, and need and respect.
So a small moment, like expressing a need and getting a kind response, can be really powerful, even surprising to them.
That surprise is key. It challenges the belief. Over time, repeated moments of being met reduce the certainty of love always disappoints. The person starts to think, maybe love does not always disappoint, or at least maybe I can survive disappointment without closing my heart. That shift brings hope back. It also helps to learn the difference between disappointment and danger. Disappointment is normal. Danger involves shame, control, or cruelty. Separating them allows them to stay present through imperfections.
This belief, while protective, also keeps them from the kind of steady love that could heal them. So understanding it gently as a protective conclusion rather than a flaw is the first step. They can then test it in small ways, allow themselves to hope a little, be met, and repair instead of withdrawing.
Exactly. Over time, love becomes less disappointing, not because it is perfect, but because they learn to build it with honesty, boundaries, and the courage to stay present.
Now, let's explore rationalizing distance, which sounds like using logic to justify pulling away. How does this work?
Rationalizing distance can sound very clear, mature, or sensible. It is like coming up with logical reasons why space is needed, why a relationship is not working, or why emotions are not necessary. Sometimes those explanations are partly true, but often the deeper purpose is to avoid the vulnerability of admitting they are scared, hurt, or longing. If they can explain their distance logically, they do not have to feel the softer truth underneath.
So it is a way to shield the heart with the mind. This must also start young if emotions were not welcomed in childhood.
Yes, absolutely. If feelings were treated as inconvenient or weak and logic and competence were rewarded, the child learns to navigate life through thinking rather than sharing emotion. As an adult, they trust logic more than feeling, and this trust becomes a shield. When intimacy triggers fear, they do not say, I am afraid. Instead, they say things like, this relationship is not right, or I need my freedom, or this is too much drama. The mind provides reasons to keep the heart hidden.
I can see how that would feel very confusing for a partner. If a partner asks for more closeness and they say things like, you are too needy or we are not compatible, it sounds like objective truth, but it is really creating distance to regain control.
Yes, and the partner feels judged while the person feels safer. This makes the relationship colder. Rationalizing distance also appears as focusing on flaws. When closeness increases, they might suddenly pick apart everything wrong with their partner's habits or traits, convincing themselves the partner is not right for them. It is easier to pull away when you feel critical. Criticism is safer than longing. They build a case in their mind to protect their heart.
And this often happens right after a tender moment, when they might feel uneasy because of the vulnerability. Their mind then interprets that unease as problems with the relationship, not as fear.
Exactly. They might think, we do not have enough in common, or they are too intense. These thoughts feel like insight, but they are often amplified by fear. Their partner experiences the resulting distance as sudden rejection. It is also tied to seeing emotions as irrational. They respect reason and calm, so emotional conversations can seem unproductive, like feelings are not facts, or talking about them creates drama. This can be a weapon against intimacy, allowing them to dismiss their partners and even their own feelings. Distance becomes justified as being reasonable.
So, in an argument, if a partner expresses hurt, they might respond by explaining why the hurt doesn't make sense. The partner feels invalidated, becomes more emotional, and then they withdraw, rationalizing it by saying the partner is too emotional. The cycle continues.
That's right. Rationalization becomes both the defense and the proof. It simplifies the story, making it easier than facing a complex situation. It also protects their identity. If their identity is built on independence, relationships asking for interdependence feel like an attack. They rationalize distance by saying, I need to focus on myself, or I'm just not the relationship type, or I'm happier alone. It's easier to declare independence than admit vulnerability.
And this can be especially strong during big relationship steps like moving in or marriage, where panic might be disguised as practical reasons about timing or finances.
Yes, the intensity of their need to pull away suggests fear is involved, and rationalization gives that fear a respectable voice, allowing them to withdraw without appearing emotional. They might say this is not practical when the real conversation is about their fear, which remains hidden behind logic. This also affects repair because repair needs hope, and admitting the relationship matters enough to work on. If they rationalize distance, they avoid that admission, saying this is not worth discussing, which prevents healing.
So how does one heal this pattern of rationalizing distance?
Healing involves learning to recognize when logic is used to avoid emotion. It is not about abandoning reason, but including emotional truth alongside rational thought. You can say, I need space, and also, I feel overwhelmed. Or, we have a real issue, and also, I am afraid of being judged. Combining reason with emotion makes communication more honest and less hurtful. For example, if they notice themselves building a case against their partner after a close moment, they can pause, ask what they are afraid of, and maybe realize they feel exposed. Instead of withdrawing, they might share a simple truth like, I feel close and it scares me sometimes. This invites understanding instead of debate.
And it also helps to understand that some distance is healthy. It is about stopping the use of distance as the only tool for safety. When distance is chosen honestly and with care, it can actually support intimacy.
That is the goal. When distance is rationalized to avoid vulnerability, it creates confusion and pain. Learning the difference is part of healing. They can keep their respect for logic and add respect for emotion, letting their reasons include their heart. Distance then becomes less of a wall and more of a boundary, and intimacy feels less threatening.
Let us explore minimizing their own emotions. This is a pattern that can be invisible even to the person doing it.
Yes, minimizing often looks like treating feelings as unimportant, pain as something to push through, and needs as something they should not have. They might say they're fine, it is not a big deal, or it doesn't matter, and they might even believe it at that moment. It's an automatic way to keep life manageable, but it disconnects them from their inner world and makes intimacy hard, because intimacy relies on emotional truth.
Again, this starts in childhood when emotions were not welcomed. Being told they are overreacting, silly for being scared, or that their needs create trouble.
Exactly. The child adapts by making feelings smaller. They learn to move on quickly, not to bother anyone, and eventually not to bother themselves. This becomes a habit. They might even be praised for this, called strong or mature. This emotional containment is admired in some families, teaching them that being low maintenance is a way to belong. As the child grows into adulthood, minimizing becomes part of identity. They become someone who does not feel much, need much, or make a fuss, often unaware their inner world has been trained to stay quiet.
So if they are hurt by something a partner says, they might tell themselves it is not important, or they are being too sensitive and the hurt gets pushed down. Then they feel distant from their partner, who senses something is off, but they say nothing is wrong. The relationship gets colder because the feelings were minimized and never addressed.
Yes, the problem is not that they lack feelings, but that the feelings are minimized. It also shows up as quickly shifting to problem solving. When they feel sadness or fear, they might turn it into a task, focusing on what to do next, like cleaning or working. Action becomes a way to avoid feeling, to minimize. If you keep moving, you do not have to sit with the emotion long enough to understand what it is asking for. This can lead to a productive but emotionally shallow life.
It is also a way to avoid shame if they learned that feelings are embarrassing or that admitting pain makes them look weak.
That is right. Minimizing keeps their dignity intact in the short term, but in the long term, it can make them feel emotionally alone because they do not allow anyone, including themselves, to meet their pain with kindness. For example, during grief, they keep functioning, say they are okay, but months later feel tired or empty because the grief went underground. Minimizing delayed emotional processing, which shows up later in confusing ways.
And this also means they struggle to respond to others' feelings. If they minimize their own sadness, it is hard to sit with someone else's. It might seem unnecessary or dramatic.
They might respond in ways that feel dismissive, not because they are uncaring, but because they treat others the way they treat themselves. They learned feelings are not something to dwell on. This leaves partners feeling lonely and unseen. It also affects self-knowledge because emotions carry important information about what they need or value. If they minimize emotions, they lose access to this information. They might not realize they're stressed until their body breaks down, or lonely until they feel unbearable emptiness.
So if they feel overwhelmed by closeness, but minimize it, they might withdraw suddenly, blindsiding their partner. If they had recognized and named the overwhelm earlier, they could have taken space in a connected way, but minimizing made that communication impossible.
Precisely. Healing begins by taking their inner experience seriously, not dramatically. It means noticing what is true and allowing it to matter. You might notice you are hurt and admit it to yourself. Many were not taught to respect their feelings, but to override them. Learning to respect feelings is a vital step towards secure attachment, allowing them to know and share themselves.
And this often starts with physical sensations, since emotions have been minimized for so long, noticing tightness, fatigue, headaches, and then pausing to ask what might be underneath.
Yes, over time, they can name the emotion. Naming it does not make them weak, it makes them aware. Awareness creates choice. Instead of saying it is nothing when hurt, they might acknowledge to themselves, that mattered. Later, they might share it. The discomfort of challenging old habits combined with the relief of being seen makes minimizing less necessary. They learn they can survive being honest.
So, minimizing emotions, while protective, creates a calm outer life, but a disconnected inner one. Understanding this pattern not as a blame, but as a way they stayed safe is crucial. Taking emotions seriously builds a different relationship with themselves and then with others, where feelings are bridges, not threats.
Exactly. They learn that being honest about their inner world is not weakness, it is the foundation of intimacy.
Next, let us talk about projecting blame onto others. This is a common defense mechanism, but how does it specifically show up in dismissive avoidant attachment?
Projection is simple. When they feel uncomfortable, exposed, or overwhelmed, it feels safer to locate the problem outside of themselves. If the problem is outside, they do not have to face the vulnerable truth inside. For dismissive avoidance, blame is a shield against shame, fear, and the discomfort of needing. It also quietly protects the identity of being strong and self-sufficient. This pattern creates distance, turning partners into opponents, and prevents them from seeing their own part in the relationship cycle.
So it starts as a way to protect themselves from feeling inadequate. If a partner expresses hurt, they might hear criticism, which triggers shame, and blame as a way to push that discomfort away.
Exactly. They might decide their partner is too emotional, too needy, or too demanding. These labels create distance and restore control. The avoidant person feels safer, but the partner feels judged, and the relationship becomes less warm. If a partner says they feel lonely and wants connection, the person feels pressure. Instead of seeing that as fear of closeness, they think, my partner is the problem. They might say the partner is never satisfied or creating drama. The partner feels hurt, maybe responds with anger, and the person feels even more justified. The blame cycle strengthens. Underneath, they are avoiding the vulnerable truth that intimacy feels scary.
And this blame feels righteous, as if withdrawing is the sensible thing to do because the partner is unreasonable.
Yes, rationalizing distance and blaming often go hand in hand. They might build a case by listing the partner's flaws, focusing on tone or timing. Some points might be true, but the deeper purpose is protection. If they can make the partner wrong, they do not have to admit they are afraid, care, or are unsure how to respond. Blame also arises from a mismatch in emotional style. They may feel overwhelmed by intensity and prefer calm. If a partner expresses strong emotions, they may see it as excessive and blame the partner for being emotional rather than recognizing their own low tolerance for emotion.
So, in an argument, if a partner raises their voice or cries, they feel overwhelmed, but instead of saying that, they blame the partner for being irrational. The partner feels invalidated and becomes more emotional, and then they withdraw, later telling themselves the relationship is too dramatic because of their partner, not seeing their own part in it.
That is a perfect example. Blame simplifies the story, creating a villain and a victim, which feels easier than facing a complex dance. Blame also protects against the fear of being needy. If you believe your partner is needy, you can justify your distance, telling yourself you are dealing with someone who asks for too much. This preserves your identity as independent. While the partner's needs might be challenging, framing them as the entire problem prevents you from seeing your own pattern.
And this pattern is even stronger when they feel guilt about not being more emotionally available. Blame turns that guilt outward.
Yes, if the partner is the problem, then they do not have to feel guilty. They can feel justified. This is why they sometimes become critical when a partner expresses longing. The longing touches their guilt, and blame helps them escape that discomfort. For example, a partner says, I need more affection, and the avoidant person responds, you are always asking for something. The partner feels shamed, and the avoidant person feels relief. Blame turns that underlying fear and guilt into criticism.
Blame also shows up as idealizing independence and criticizing dependence. Believing needing is weakness, they judge others for it, seeing themselves as strong and others as fragile. This stance prevents empathy and acknowledging their own needs.
So how can someone heal from projecting blame?
Healing begins by pausing and asking what they are protecting against. When they feel the urge to label their partner, they can ask what they are feeling inside. Overwhelmed, ashamed, afraid, pressured. It is about moving from blame to responsibility, recognizing their part in what is happening, seeing the pattern rather than turning the relationship into a courtroom. For example, instead of saying, "You are too needy," they might say, "I feel overwhelmed when we talk like this." This shifts to conversation from accusation to self-disclosure, allowing the partner to respond with empathy and creating safety. It also helps to recognize that partners usually express needs because they want connection, not control.
So projection is a defense that protects them from shame and fear, justifying distance, but it hurts connections. By replacing accusation with self-awareness and blame with honest boundaries, they can remain independent and still be kind.
Yes, the relationship becomes less about defending against each other and more about understanding, which is key to building secure, steady love.
Now let us discuss black and white thinking about closeness. This sounds like seeing things in extremes with no middle ground.
That is exactly it. Black and white thinking means seeing closeness as either totally safe and easy or dangerous and suffocating, with very little in between. It's like believing you either stay completely independent or you lose yourself entirely, or you either say nothing at all or you open the floodgates, or you commit completely or you should leave. This makes relationships feel much more threatening than they need to be, turning ordinary intimacy into an all-or-nothing choice.
And this pattern of thinking also forms early if their experiences of closeness were inconsistent or uncomfortable.
Yes, if closeness sometimes meant warmth and sometimes criticism, it becomes confusing. If it meant pressure to perform or emotional intensity without repair, closeness becomes danger. In those environments, the child learns to simplify. The child learns that distance is safer than navigating complicated closeness. These early lessons can lead adults to swing between really wanting closeness and really fearing it.
One common example of this black and white thinking is believing that needing someone equals being trapped, that if they depend even a little, they will be controlled.
Absolutely. They might fear that if they share feelings, their partner will demand more, or that committing means losing all freedom. These fears are understandable if dependence was shamed in their past, but this all-or-nothing thinking exaggerates those fears. They cannot imagine a relationship where they can be close and still have their autonomy. They see only two options: full independence or suffocation. This often shows up when a partner asks for an emotional conversation. They might think, if I start talking, this will never end, fearing hours of discussion or having to fix everything. They choose silence, which feels safer because it ends the risk. The partner then feels abandoned and becomes more urgent. The extreme becomes more extreme. In the middle ground, like a short, honest conversation with a clear boundary, is missed.
And this thinking applies to relationship problems too. If there is conflict, they might think the relationship is simply wrong, that true love should be easy. They see discomfort as incompatibility, not as part of growth, leading to sudden withdrawals or breakups.
That is right. The partner feels blindsided and the person feels relief. Underneath, they might not have learned that conflict can be repaired. Without that experience, conflict feels like proof that love disappoints, turning an issue into a final verdict. After a difficult argument, they might think, "This is not worth it," or "We will never work." These thoughts feel absolute, but they are often the mind trying to escape vulnerability. They pull away, the partner gets anxious, and the cycle repeats, reinforcing the idea that closeness is either perfect or unbearable.
It also affects how they see themselves, believing they are either strong or weak, independent or needy. They cannot be both. So if they feel lonely, they might shame themselves for it.
Yes, they might deny wanting comfort, believing that needing means failure. This internal all-or-nothing mindset makes it hard to integrate normal human complexity. You can love someone and need space, be strong and still need comfort. But with black and white thinking, these mixed truths feel impossible. The person chooses one side and suppresses the other. This shows up in the push-pull paradox. They swing between extremes because the middle feels unsafe or unfamiliar. The partner experiences inconsistency and the person experiences confusion. Stability, which requires flexibility, becomes hard to build.
And it makes boundaries feel harsh, like they have to be strong and final. They might withdraw completely instead of asking for space because they fear a softer boundary will be ignored.
That is often the case. They might shut down rather than saying they need a pause. The partner experiences this as abandonment, and the person sees it as the only way to protect themselves. The middle ground, a boundary that is clear and kind, is not used because black and white thinking makes boundaries feel like either nothing or a wall.
So, how can someone find this middle ground and heal from this kind of thinking?
Healing involves learning to see the middle. That is where healthy relationships live, where you can be close and still have space, share feelings and still have privacy, have conflict and still stay connected. For them, this often starts with language that creates nuance. They learn to say, I care and I need space, instead of choosing between the two. Or, I'm not ready to talk about everything, but I can talk about one part, instead of silence or a flood of emotion. For instance, if overwhelmed, they might say, I want to stay connected and I need a 10-minute break. This honors both needs. The partner feels safer because they know the person is returning, and the person feels safer because they are not being swallowed. Practicing this rewires the meaning of closeness.
It also means challenging the belief that closeness is a trap, that intimacy will erase their identity. In healthy relationships, intimacy supports, it does not erase. It allows each person to be themselves while still being connected.
Exactly. This kind of intimacy with boundaries and mutual respect softens black and white thinking. They begin to believe in a relationship where both freedom and closeness can exist. This thinking pattern protected them from the uncertainty of vulnerability. But by learning to see the middle, they can communicate with nuance and live in a relationship where they do not have to choose between love and freedom. Closeness then feels like a path they can walk at their own pace, respecting their need for connection and their need for self.
Let us bring these ideas together by discussing how beliefs reinforce avoidance. It seems like all these beliefs feed into each other, making change difficult.
That is absolutely right. Avoidance is not just a behavior. It is supported by a whole inner world of assumptions about what closeness means and what vulnerability costs. When these beliefs are active, they shape what someone notices, how they interpret things, and what they choose to do or avoid doing. Over time, the beliefs and the behavior feed each other. The belief says closeness is risky, so they withdraw. Withdrawing brings relief, which then makes the belief feel proven. The pattern gets stronger because it works in the short term, even though it hurts in the long run.
So these beliefs create a sense of safety, even if it is a false one, that keeps the avoidance going.
Precisely. If they believe they can only rely on themselves, reaching out feels pointless or humiliating. If needing others is dangerous, emotional openness feels like stepping into a trap. If love always disappoints, hope feels naive. These beliefs formed from real experiences, often early in life. The problem is these beliefs, formed in one difficult environment, stay active even in a different, safer one. Your adult partner might be kind and steady, but your beliefs still treat closeness as unsafe. The belief becomes a filter that shapes the relationship more than reality does.
And this filter creates specific interpretations. A partner asking for closeness is a demand. Emotions are drama. Reassurance is weakness.
Yes, and these interpretations often feel like obvious truths, not just opinions. They then respond to their interpretation, not their partner's actual intention. They withdraw, minimize, or become critical. The partner feels hurt, perhaps becomes more emotional, which then makes the person feel justified because the partner's emotion now seems like proof of drama. The belief is reinforced by the very cycle it creates. Beliefs also direct their attention. If they believe closeness is dangerous, they naturally look for signs that prove it, noticing moments when a partner is emotional or disappointed or wants more. They might overlook moments of gentleness or respect, or when closeness feels good. Their attention goes toward evidence of threat because their mind is trying to protect them. The result is that the relationship feels more threatening than it is, and avoidance seems necessary.
So if a partner asks for reassurance once, they might see it as a sign that the partner will always need reassurance, become tense, and start pulling away. The partner senses distance and gets anxious, which then makes the person feel crowded and withdraw further.
Exactly. The belief that need leads to danger becomes stronger, not because the partner is truly dangerous, but because their belief led them to respond in a way that created anxiety in the partner. The belief shaped the behavior, and the behavior created the evidence. And then there is the relief factor. When they withdraw, they often feel calmer immediately, like they can finally breathe. That relief is powerful. It teaches their body that distance equals safety. So they trust distance more than connection because distance reliably brings relief. The partner experiences pain, but the person feels soothed. This feeling of relief strengthens the belief that closeness is dangerous.
It becomes a tricky cycle because the very thing that hurts the relationship also gives them a sense of safety in the short term. And this impacts their identity too.
Absolutely. Many see themselves as independent, rational, and strong. Those are real strengths, but if these identities become too rigid, they discourage vulnerability. If being strong means not needing, then needing feels like failure. If being rational means not being emotional, then emotion feels like embarrassment. If independence is who they are, intimacy feels like erasure. So they avoid emotional closeness to protect identity. The partner might interpret this as lack of love, but the person interprets it as self-preservation.
So in conflict, if a partner wants to talk and they feel overwhelmed thinking, I do not do these conversations, that thought is identity. It is non-negotiable. They shut down, withdraw, and then say, this is why I hate talking about feelings, reinforcing the belief that they are not the emotional type.
That is exactly it. They see their withdrawal as proof rather than a learned protection that can change. These beliefs also prevent repair. Repair needs hope that change is possible. If they believe love always disappoints, they might not invest in repair, thinking talking will not help or that needs are endless. So they withdraw. The partner feels unsupported, the relationship becomes less satisfying, and then they feel validated because the relationship does not feel good. The belief is reinforced by the lack of repair, even though the relationship might have improved with it. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If they believe they can only rely on themselves, they will not ask for help. Others then do not help because they do not know it is needed. They feel alone and conclude they truly cannot rely on anyone. If needing is dangerous, they will not express needs. Their partner may not meet those needs because they are unaware of them. They feel disappointed and conclude love always disappoints. The belief creates behavior, the behavior creates outcomes, and the outcomes confirm the belief. It is not weakness, it is a protection repeating itself.
So how can someone break this deeply embedded cycle? It seems so strong.
Healing begins by gently challenging beliefs with new experiences. You cannot argue your way out of an attachment belief because it lives in your nervous system and your memory, but you can update it through repeated moments where something goes differently. You express a small need and it is met. You share a feeling and you are not judged. You take space and you return and the relationship remains safe. You have a conflict and you repair it and you feel closer afterward. These experiences are the evidence your system needs. They weaken the old belief and strengthen a new one.
So instead of withdrawing when they feel this will become too much, they communicate that they are overwhelmed and need a pause, and then return to the conversation later. The partner feels safer, and they feel safer because they maintained their freedom.
Yes. The belief that closeness means being trapped weakens because they just experienced closeness with boundaries. They learned a new truth. Intimacy can include space. It also helps to develop a more compassionate inner voice. Many have harsh beliefs about needing, feelings, and vulnerability. That harshness keeps avoidance in place because it makes vulnerability feel shameful. When they replace harshness with kindness, they reduce the fear of being human. They can say to themselves, "This is hard for me," instead of "I should not need."
They can say, I can try one small step instead of I must be perfect or silent. This gentleness makes new behavior possible.
So these beliefs formed to protect them from the pain of unmet need, but they also keep them from the joy of being met. Seeing how beliefs and behaviors feed each other gives them new power to interrupt the cycle and test new beliefs.
Absolutely. Avoidance becomes less automatic because safety becomes more real. They do not have to stop being independent. They just learn that independence does not have to mean distance, and that love does not have to be a disappointment. It can be a place where they are strong and still allowed to be held.
This has been a truly insightful conversation about the intricate patterns of dismissive avoidant attachment, drawing from the clear explanations in Mindy Rivers' book, Understanding the Dismissive Avoidant Attachment Style. If you found this discussion helpful, please consider sharing it with someone who might benefit.